Hey everybody, welcome back to Backlog Banter. I'm joined today by Tucker, and we are here to chat about Cyberpunk
Oh yeah, we are.
2077. And the reason we're back today is because if you watched the last episode of BLB, you would know that
Released
I
yesterday.
released yesterday that I, after many moons, about
Hmm
2 weeks of not being able to play the game and hearing all the fucking controversy, finally got to play it. I
How
talked about my first.
is the cycle of moon? We're doing some research. 29.5 days. Takes about a month. So really you did like half a moon.
I did about half a moon cycle.
Yeah.
What's interesting to me has always been the way that the moon impacts the tides, but that's a discussion for a different time.
It's
What
true.
we're
Yeah.
talking about,
Cyberpunk is different from that, yeah.
what we're talking about right now is the fact that during that episode of BLB, I had played 1 hour of Cyberpunk. Now I have played 8. And so we're going to talk about my impressions of this game, 8 hours. And before we get to that, today is actually my birthday. Happy birthday to me.
Oh
I'm
god
now
damn it.
20 years old. And for my 20th birthday, amongst other things, I got this really cool Cyberpunk world building book.
Now quick question.
Yeah.
What is the point of that slot on the side, like the cutout bit?
Well, this comes off,
Okay.
and then this comes off.
No, that comes out. It's the book.
You can go fuck yourself. This is the book. This is the back cover art. Consider this an unboxing. This is a thing full of temporary tattoos and a poster of Johnny Silverhand and postcards. But
The fact that they thought that including temporary tattoos was a good idea for a rated M game, that's entertaining to me.
Yeah, I don't really understand the target demographic for this because I'm sure as fuck not going to put them on. But look at this book. It's full of pictures and words. But what's cool about this book and what ties into something I didn't talk about really before is that this is full of lore from Cyberpunk 2020 and all of the supplemental material that came and informed the world of Cyberpunk
Cyberpunk
prior.
2020 came out this year.
No, it didn't. Let's not mislead the audience. That's a tabletop game from a long time ago. But this is full of like lore and backgrounding information because but prior to the game's launch, I was reading a lot and learning about what Mike Pondsmith had created, who's the original creator of Cyberpunk, and really
Yeah.
getting my head wrapped around the world. And in that first hour of gameplay, I hadn't gotten to see a lot of the stuff I've been reading about. And as I've played more, I've gotten a great look at the world. And so I'm really excited to read this book too. But this is
Someone just started weed whacking, I believe.
but so I'm really excited to read this book and get more into the lore. But that's completely tangential. I just wanted to show you a cool fucking present I got from my parents. Thanks, Mom and Dad.
Wow.
But what we're really here to
What a great son.
what we're here to talk about are my impressions of this video game, not the
True.
book I have for it.
Yeah.
Now, Tucker, this has kind of been a fucking mess of a video so far, to be honest with you. It's been
Yeah.
jovial and fun, but
Mhm.
now we're going to get down to the meat and potatoes of it. And we have been talking
Okay, I've been dreading this.
We've been talking exhaustively about Cyberpunk. We were talking about Cyberpunk at like 1:30 in the morning yesterday, my time. I was like, I got to go to bed. Then you said, why don't instead you eat pineapple and bacon? And I didn't know how to really respond to that. But Tucker, the fact of the matter is that I've been playing a lot of Cyberpunk. And let me tell you something.
Congratulations.
I
I'm Iron Man. Holy shit, really? What? Okay, fuck you.
no,
You like
no,
the
I,
game. You little
yeah,
bitch.
I wanted to see. Here's the thing, folks. I'm editing the videos right now, so I get to include a pregnant pause, and Tucker can't stop me, but he interrupted it.
Well, so
But
what you can do is actually you can insert a pregnant pause anywhere you want by just like putting a freeze frame, right?
I
Like you can just like stop the video and just like
I
whatever you
could
want.
do that.
In
I
the middle
could
of
do
my
that.
sentence, you could have done that.
I
You have the
won't
editing
because that's
powers.
a lot of work, and the audience doesn't deserve that much editing work.
Mm-hmm. It's true.
But so now that we've gotten all the fuckery out of the way, because there's a lot in both of our systems right now. I think I've been eating a lot of Twix bars today.
Mhm.
I love Cyberpunk 2077
I don't like Twix
or Cyberpunk 2077,
or Cyberpunk. Yeah,
which makes
fun,
this
fun
session
coincidence.
very interesting. And so you told me that you were really excited to watch my thoughts unfold as I played more of the game and actually got into the meat and potatoes of it. Because what I had
Yep.
played for BLB was the first hour, which is very scripted.
Yeah.
I hadn't really gotten out into the open world. I hadn't done a lot of the more emergent content. I hadn't gotten that far into the story. Not that anyone in this call really had.
Mm-hmm.
But the point is, I was so fresh to it that those impressions, while they're really positive, were so preliminary that they weren't really informed by much.
Yeah.
Now that I've played 8 hours of the game, I still love it, but I feel like that's grounded in something a little bit more legitimate. And my general thesis about Cyberpunk 2077 is that it reminds me a lot of the Outer Worlds. I know you haven't played it, but for people who haven't played the Outer Worlds, it's a Fallout-esque title. And for me, it's scratching that sort of itch. And that's why I really love it. I'm really engaged by the narrative. I'm really engaged by the combat. I think Night City is second to none in terms of worlds to explore. For me, Hyrule and Breath of the Wild is the gold standard. And this is close for completely different reasons. They're very different games. But in terms of worlds that feel alive that I want to be in and explore, Night City is incredible. My biggest issue with the game right now actually involves the sense of choice in the experience. To some degree, you do have choice. For instance, I went into this club called Clouds. I was looking for a woman, and so I have to talk. It's basically like a sex club. So I'm talking to one of the workers
As are
there.
most of the buildings in Night City.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'm talking to one of the women there, and she's like, you know what? If you need more information, you should probably talk to this guy in the VIP area. Now, you were supposed to sneak into the VIP area, but I accidentally went in where I shouldn't be, and they pulled guns on me. And at Clouds, you have to leave your weapons at the door. So I beat the shit out of the first guy and took his gun and worked my way through, got to the VIP, and my conversation was different and easier because he was freaking the fuck out because I had just shot my way to him. And he sent me to another guy who didn't let me talk to him, but instead entered like a boss battle because I had gotten to him the way that I did. So there is some elements of choice here that I like, but where the choice I think falters is in the narrative department. I don't think that the dialogue options are very good at all, and this is my biggest issue with the game right now. Um, I really love dialogue choice. I think that that is such a clever part of the RPG experience, but it feels like Cyberpunk has one route through the conversation that it wants you to take, and a lot of options circle you back to the choice that they want, and the others are more of distractions instead of really allowing you to influence the way that a conversation unfolds. You can do that somewhat depending on your life path. I chose Corpo, so there are conversations and encounters I can get around by using my corpo background. For instance, I was going to these street thugs who were trying to heckle me a little bit, but because I was a corpo, I was like, hey, you guys can go fuck yourself, da 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 da, and I was able to avoid this combat encounter. So there are things like that, but that's the one place of the game is faltering for me. But on the whole, I love this game.
Great. It's hard for me to know how to spin off of that to discuss my thoughts on the game. I've been thinking about Cyberpunk 2077 a lot, like
Yeah,
all the fucking time. Um, and that is based off of the 2 days that I was able to fucking stomach playing the game. Um,
yes,
I have realized as I've thought about the game more, read more about it online, listened to more discussions, that my greatest disappointment with the game is not necessarily the thing I started with complaining about, which was, or not in this video, but in past discussions,
sure,
which was I didn't find the gameplay, shooting, driving, stealth, hacking, all that. I felt like those were relatively basic, and while that's true, they're just fine. They're not innovative. They're not exemplary in any way, in my opinion. But I think the thing that ended up disappointing me the most is just a lack of quality of life open world game things that this game has, and it makes it feel automatically dated. And it also just kind of takes away from that sort of air that the game had around it, that this was going to be the next gen big open world experience, so much choice, you can do whatever you want, but you can't customize your character after the customization screen, except for with clothes. There's no transmog for the clothes, so you have to change the clothes. You can't have the visuals that you want. You have to have certain ones for certain stats. You might look weird, but you have good stats, or you can choose to look good but have bad stats. I find that a little bit frustrating. There's no like body modification other than like the upgrades that you can't see, which is a little bit disappointing. You can't do anything in your house. Like it's storage, but you can't upgrade it in any way. And I think it's just the fact that those things make the game feel like you're not really building into anything on your personal journey. Of course, there's quests, and you're getting your upgrades, and you're building your stats with those kind of upgrades, and getting upgrades from the fucking doctor guys, which I can't remember the name of.
Ripper Docs.
Yeah, Rip Doc. Yeah, yeah. I think those are fine, but the fact that the game lacks so much in terms of customization makes it feel like they were really not presenting the game as it is, rather as this idea that it did not come to be. And I find that really frustrating, because so much of the hype around the game was built on, this is your world. Fucking the question, what makes someone a criminal? It's like, okay, well, it makes you a criminal if you chose the right life path or not. Like, there's just so much this game does to knock down that feeling of choice that it was built, the hype was built up around, that it's just, I don't understand how this game was marketed the way it was.
Now, it's interesting you say that because I don't give a fuck about the marketing. And I think that that's informing our opinions very differently.
Well, here's the
Um,
thing. I didn't either, because I came into this not watching any commercials,
sure.
had never having seen gameplay. So I didn't have expectations to base this on. I had the expectations of the general zeitgeist around this game, and that it was a new open world RPG.
And I think for being an open world RPG, it delivers a very good experience. My point is that I don't care about how it was marketed. I don't care about what CD Projekt Red said. I care about the game I'm playing. And if the game is different than the game they talked about, that's one thing. But it reminds me of No Man's Sky. These are very different games. I think the comparison between them is being made too flippantly. But for my personal experience, No Man's Sky was not the game that Hello Games said it was going to be. But what was on the disc and what compelled me, that's fine. What was on the disc and what compelled me, it didn't matter that that's what they didn't. It's not what they were talking about. I got this space experience, and I judged it based on that. The zeitgeist around the game, I don't care about. I've never been one to really care about anyone else's opinions, believe it or not. So when I play Cyberpunk, I'm not saddled with 9 years of hype and marketing. I watched a lot of stuff from CD Projekt Red. I saw a lot about the world that really compels me. Like I said, I watch a lot of lore stuff. I watched Keanu Reeves do some behind the scenes. I watched them see how they recorded audio for the bikes and for the cars, and I saw some stuff about how Night City came to be. But what I care about first and foremost is the experience I'm having in Night City, and not the experience that they didn't give me. Because what I'm getting here is scratching a very precise itch, because this is an archetypical open world game in the vein of what Private Division with who Obsidian does. Outer Worlds,
Yeah.
Private Division publishes it, and Bethesda. This is one of those types of games. And so the loop of getting loot, of completing quests, of meeting characters, of exploring Night City, that is what's here, and that's what really compels me. Like I said, I find myself missing that layer of choice, because I do think that that's where the game is at its weakest. But
Yeah.
in the moment to moment experience, I'm so compelled by the way that these characters are put together. I'm compelled by the stories they're telling us. I did a side quest where I went to a funeral for a character who I'm not going to spoil here, who passes away in one of the main story missions. And they're just these moments that are so incredible. I think that Cyberpunk is a game of incredible moments tied together in a pretty traditional framework. And for me, it's the strength of my attachment to Cyberpunk as a genre, to the way that the game is constructed, that really draws me in. It's not it's not a format and a structure that's unfamiliar. And I think this
Yeah.
is where, like you were saying, you feel the length of the game's development cycle. You feel
Mhm.
that the fact that this game has been in full production since 2016 and has been worked on since when they first announced it in 2011, 2012. You can feel that time and that snowballing effect. You can see them taking cues and pages from other games of the time, and putting them together in this format. And for me, I think that really works.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I think we differ on our viewpoints of how to analyze games. I think that this is an important thing to consider, is this game does not come out in a bubble. It does not come out in a world where you shouldn't compare it to other games, where you shouldn't base it on the merits of it being an quote unquote next gen experience. So when it's lacking so many things that were A, advertised, and B, should be expected from an open world game of this caliber, it does feel a little bit empty and rushed. And of course, their development time went into the characters and the story and the animation in Night City, which all of which I will not disparage in any way, because I don't have issues with those aspects of the game. But I think that the fundamentals of it as an open world game are really just vague to me, which is a weird word to describe that. But I mean that I played the game a very different way that you did. I have put more time in it than you have, but I've not progressed in the story as much as you have. And it's a little bit strange to me that this game that is, from my perspective, going into it with little expectations, supposed to be so much about you building your experience in Night City, that it feels like they want you to play it a certain way. And if you're not playing it that way, it's a markedly different experience. I played the game digging around every corner, looking for all of the notes. I played 9 hours of the game and I didn't get to the out of the intro because I was just doing every side quest I could, talking to as many NPCs as I could, digging through all the files in my inventory and learning all the menus and things like that. And that didn't provide me a compelling experience, but that's how I enjoy playing those kind of games. So
Yeah.
when I go into something like Skyrim or Fallout or Far Cry or Breath of the Wild, where you can really go at your own pace, discover things, build your own story in a more personalized way, it's just so strange that this open world game essentially works best one way and is a lot weaker if you want to play it, if you don't want to play it the way that they quote unquote intend you to. And I just think that that's just really strange, because so many other open world RPGs for years have been able to provide players with that experience. I mean, the Fallout and Elder Scrolls series have been doing that for decades. So I don't know.
I think again where we differ is that when I'm looking at this and I see this sort of homogeny of parts, I'm seeing some Destiny in it, I'm seeing some Outer Worlds in it, I'm seeing some Breath of the Wild in it, I'm seeing a lot of different things in it, but I just think that it's being a different experience than you were expecting. And like I said, it's not that I'm viewing the game in a bubble, it's that I'm not concerning myself with what happened in the run up to release. Because in the run up to release, it was charitably misleading marketing, but blatantly manipulative marketing. So I don't care about any of that. None of that means anything to me, because what's here and what's going to transpire is the game. And so what matters is how does it stack up to its contemporaries, like you were saying, and where it falters for you, I don't think it falters for me. Because yes, it is a narrative first experience, and I think that the strongest aspects of the game are those main quest missions. And if you do go back to it at some point, you're on the precipice of the story really dominoing into some really compelling plot points. You're not too far away from meeting Johnny Silverhand. You're not too far away from a really big and interesting thing happening. And at the same time, the side content is what it is. It's supplemental. And what's important about it is that the best side quest missions unfold as the main narrative does. So, for instance, the funeral I went to, that side mission only became available because I hit the main quest plot point that enabled that character to die. So it's a sort of thing where a game like Breath of the Wild is so open that it doesn't give a fuck where you go at all. And I think that sort of immersion experience is really special. But in Cyberpunk, it's about marrying that main track with these offshoots that you can then take as you move through the story. It puts a sense of urgency on the player that these other games don't, and I think that's where the choice falters a little bit. But because of it, with the fact that I can follow that main track and it's giving me these little threads that I can then pull on, that feels special to me because it feels like the world is moving with V as he moves through the story. So I see where you're coming from, but I think it is one of those things where if you progressed through the game a little bit more narratively, it would open up in these ways that I think would allow you to be compelled by it the way these other games compel you also.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking a lot the other day about comparing it to these other open world games that I've put so much time into and I enjoy so greatly. When I was playing Cyberpunk and in the way that I wanted to, as the usual way that I engage with a Fallout or a Skyrim or any kind of these open world games, which are lore based, lots of side quests. You know, you can find little things that are mini stories. I find that really interesting. Um, that I play these games not for the main story, but to build my own story within it. I
Yeah.
don't know what happens in Skyrim, even though I've beaten that game. My best memories in that game, or even with Breath of the Wild, which story isn't great, but like, or Far Cry 3 or any of these games, The things I enjoy most are ditching the main story as early as I can, finding a small town and just digging through that town's lore and history and those quests and unlocking the world around that. And when the game is technically open to you relatively early on, like I only have a section of the city, which is fine. Of course, it should unlock more as it goes. But that the section of the city that I have is overcrowded with things that are not properly introduced to you. As soon as you get the fucking mini map or the map, it just slaps you in the face with every possible marker, which feels like it hasn't learned from open world design of the last 15 years, where you should be introduced to new kinds of side content, and it should be taught to you what each of these markers means and how you want to engage with them, and once you beat them, what to unlock and how does that feed into the other systems. They just slap you in the face with everything in a way that is overly freeing and sort of breaks the pacing, but then they don't let you play into those things that they've slapped you in the face with because they want you to play the main story. And if you don't play the main story, you can't get out of this area. You can't really interact with the characters in a certain way. And I find that just like it's counterintuitive to the open world design that this game has been sold on and I think is formatted around. And I am a story guy first and foremost for games. I prefer linear games most often. But
Yeah.
when I'm looking for that open world experience, I'm looking to be able to create my own story, to play my own role in a game. RPG, I'm looking for that. And unfortunately, I think this game is more not unfortunately, it is what it is, but unfortunately for my experience in engaging with it, it is a lot more linear than I was expecting, especially early on. I am interested in the game once I have hardware that fucking runs it.
Yeah.
Um, to possibly go back to it, get through that first story hump, and then go to my own devices because I've heard of so many interesting side quests and characters and little stories that are what I'm looking for in this game. Unfortunately, the tease of that early on was not compelling enough for me to feel like the gameplay loop was going to progress in any significant way, and I just found that very frustrating. Yeah,
If I
I'm
can
just
interject just for a second, unless I don't want to cut off your point.
no, I don't know what else to say.
I just don't think that I think that the fucked state of the PS4 version has left you in a position where you just did not get to what you're looking for. Because it's important to remember that you're talking about linearity in what's happening before the title card hits.
Mhm.
And my point
Which for
is
me was 9 hours.
right, but it's not really. If you do, you can hit that title card in 4 hours.
But it is because it's an open world game that gives you that choice.
Yeah, but my point being is that that freedom opens up once the game has established itself. It gives you that option to go into the open world if you want it, but what it's trying to do is get to the first plot point and the completion of the first plot point to really give you that experience that you're looking for.
Yeah,
You it's intentionally trying to be a little bit more linear because it needs to get Johnny Silverhand in your head.
yeah,
That's what it needs to do to allow you to have these more emergent moments and allow you to pull on these plot threads. But to do that, it needs to set it up. I think perhaps the game's mistake is to give you that open world at all before you hit the title
I
card.
agree. I agree. And that's where
But
my problems with the pacing come in. Yeah.
but my point is that that then can't be your be all end all metric for how the game interfaces its main content with its side content and the emergent moments in the world when you need to hit the crux of where the game begins. This game, I think, it's paced. It looks like it's going to be a shooter. It looks like it's going to be an open world game, but it's paced as a more slower RPG. And
Mhm.
you have to ride with that for a little bit. And if you ride with that just to the title card, I think you're going to find the experience that you want because it does have that side content and it does have those moments you're looking for. And again, I'm speaking from a very early perspective, but I'm speaking from somebody who took the urgency that the storyline presents pre-title card and walked with it. because once I got there, then there's the storyline, but the storyline branches and you're like, okay, here's a couple different things you can tackle. And it frees you to go to the funeral. It frees you to go around Night City. It frees you to get new vehicles. It frees you to do all of these things, which blossom out into the experience you're waiting for. What you're talking about is on an hour basis, on a temporal basis, more than me. But it's such a
Exactly.
fractional part of what CD Projekt Red wants you to experience. You pushed back against their linearity in a way that I think pushed you off of the enjoyment of the game. And I think that if you rode with that just a little bit more, you're going to get to where you'll find a harmony between the immersion experience you're looking for and the narrative push that you didn't feel.
So here's the thing. I understand that. However, I think that the structure of the game being so linear in some ways and open in others is my main issue with it.
Yeah,
I did not know that there was a title card. I didn't know that the next story mission was going to unlock that because
yeah.
how could I? Like I didn't know the story because I was the fucking second day of the game had come out. So I'm playing the game. It gives me an open world, and I'm like, okay, I can go do what I want. They have given me access to this.
Yeah.
Why should I know that the next story mission is going to give me to this? Give me the content that I'm looking for, quote unquote. But I get to that point and I'm not feeling compelled by the characters because they're throwing so much at me that I don't feel a story hook. They're throwing so many different, people are just calling you all the time, giving you side quests, even when you can't access a lot of them, which I think is very strange. There's so many issues with the open pacing of the game not meeting what CD Projekt would want you to do to get to that point. Like honestly, I thought that I had gotten to the open world part because I thought the montage was the title sequence, right? Like I felt like you do that first real linear part, you can't do anything else. You hit the montage. I'm like, okay, all right, they're building up. This is what's gonna happen. These are the characters, blah blah blah. And they spit me out into the open world. I can go talk to Jackie, or I can go off and do what I want. Of course, I do talk to Jackie. I'm like, okay, I'll get a little bit farther in the story. But when I'm given that choice, I expect that choice to be able to be engaged with in a way that it was not given to me. So when I'm playing this game for 9 hours and I'm not necessarily compelled by the characters because they're throwing too much at me and I can't feel like I'm connected to anything, they throw too many points on the map at me so I don't understand what anything is because it's not explained to me. And the gameplay basic loop of personally unsatisfying combat because the enemy eyes is pretty not very great. The stealth is just as basic as you can fucking get and also kind of broken. The driving from what I've experienced and from what I've heard from others is just not very interesting. And the open world at the beginning is not very interesting to engage with. I have no reason to want to get to that next story point because I have no idea that's going to change. And I think the fact that they tease you with that openness, but then want you to do something else is just a poor structural issue that made me play the game for 9 hours and feel like there was nothing was really going to change because I know way of knowing that I was going to.
I mean, I think that it comes back to the fact that you didn't want to follow the narrative path. And I'm not saying that like not to scold you, but because that's
Yeah.
just the way you play these games. You didn't want to follow it.
Mhm.
But they do bombard you with a lot. They fucking V's phone number was leaked on Twitter or something
Yeah.
because he gets a lot of fucking messages. But if you followed that path for, I'm telling you, literally another hour, you
Yeah.
would have the cast tightens and you focus on a small group of characters and you hit a plot point that levels the playing field.
Now here's the thing. Why didn't they start with that? If they had started me with a small group of characters, a compelling story hook, I would have wanted to continue to find out, to explore to more characters. Instead, they balloon at the beginning and then tighten it up. And I don't think that is
Be, be,
proper story form.
because they balloon for like a fractional period of time and you took that fractional period of time and made it into a garden instead. And that's
Mhm.
fine, but it's the equivalent of playing Pokemon, getting to the first town, and then walking around in the grass and finding the same like four Pokemon and fighting them over and over again. That's what you did instead of walking to the next town. That's the
Yep.
best analog I can give you because we all played Pokemon when we were young and dumb and didn't get very far. And as soon as
Yeah.
you, and I'm not calling you dumb by the way, that was a
No, that's
poor
fine.
that's poor
That's fine.
phrasing. But if you allow yourself to walk forward, you're gonna get what you're looking for. I really believe that. And what I'm saying, my biggest thesis about your opinion of the game, not and because I fucking hate when people are like, your opinion is invalid, and your
Mhm.
opinion is not invalid, but your opinion is operating on the basis of a tiny portion of the game that you're turning into a larger thing than it is. See, Cyberpunk 2077 has a problem with early game pacing.
Yeah.
I don't think that that problem with early game pacing supersedes everything that comes after it.
Sure.
And I think that if you allow yourself to literally do that next story mission, you're going to be compelled, because I think part of the problem is that I didn't want to do that side content because I did find that story compelling.
Mhm.
And some of that is due to the fact that I am playing on PS5 and the whole presentation is much better. The
Yeah.
characters look better. I saw a comparison of when Dexter Deshawn is like, okay, you're gonna steal this thing from the Maelstrom Boys. That
Yeah.
cutscene looks like fucking dick on PS4. On PS5, it's smooth and it has detail to
Yeah,
it,
I don't necessarily remember
buttery.
that, but
But I wanted to do the all foods mission, and when I do the all foods mission, you're called on the phone like, hey, let's go meet Dex and let's do the heist.
mhm.
And if you ignore that, that's totally fine. But the game is putting a sense of urgency on you to do that mission. It, and
Yeah.
if you had taken the urgency, if you had taken the call, you would have been put in a plot point that immediately carries you through the opening of the game. And there would have been political intrigue, there would have been a compelling cast, there would have been set piece narrative moments that would have pushed you forward, and then they would have said, okay, we've lurched you there, and now we're gonna let go. And if you want to follow this plot thread, you can. But if you want to go about the main storyline this way instead, you can. You can do these things parallel, or you can go all the way over here and have your experience. But I just think that because you decided not to follow that first thing when they call you and say, hey, it's time to roll, your experience was colored because of it. And it's CD Projekt's fault for letting you fall off the wagon. They
Yeah.
shouldn't have let you fall off the wagon. But I
I
think
mean, literally comparison is Skyrim.
there's a
Literally,
lag.
there's a fucking wag. Yeah, you
Right.
open on a wag. Yeah, and I just wanted to
Yeah.
do that tangent. But I think the salient point is that what Skyrim does is funnel you through a opening segment that teaches you the relationships between the characters and the warring factions, introduces you to a couple of towns which are in sort of a more linear order, and as soon as you hit the first city, it allows you to sort of go wherever you want. Honestly, it does allow you to go wherever you want. And I'm thinking of comparing this game to the other open world games that I've put hundreds of hours into. Uh, Xenoblade Chronicles 2 comes to mind because I have found that small cast and political intrigue from the very beginning to be so compelling that I wanted to explore more of the world. With Skyrim, as I said, there was a lot. There was one other game that I wanted to compare it to, but Spider-Man. Spider-Man. I think
Okay.
that the way that these games introduce you to the world, the characters, and then the open world mechanics and the gameplay mechanics is so much more intriguing that I want to find out more characters. I understand the point of, hey, they're calling you, this is the urgency. But because they had thrown so many characters at me, I couldn't tell who was important or not, except for Jackie. Obviously, he's kind of with you a little bit more. So I didn't know, I had no way of knowing that that was the next big thing. I was constantly receiving fucking calls from everyone and their goddamn mother about, hey, can you do this? Hey, can you do this for me? Like there's a thing going on. And then this one call from a character that I'd seen, but I didn't, or I had met, but I didn't know a lot about, and it was just equally as important as all the other characters that they introduced me to in every single mission. And how was I supposed to know that that next mission wasn't going to introduce me to 4 more characters, because every mission before that had? And I didn't want to continue on that because I was getting so overwhelmed. I wanted to slow the pace down, discover the world, get myself reoriented, and instead I found something that was relatively empty. And I realized that my impressions are early, but I do think that the idea of a game not having the intrigue from the beginning is a pretty big criticism in my eyes. I'm not the kind of guy to say, hey, it gets good 30 hours in. And of course that's not referencing this game, but it is something that I could have played around in that open world for 30 hours and not have realized. But I was so turned off by the upgrade systems, especially the fucking trees that you get on your upgrade menu, you put fucking points into, and they all do basically the exact same fucking thing. Instead of diversifying your moveset like a Skyrim or a Fallout, everything goes into you getting more fucking damage points or DPS. And it's like, why would I want to do that? I can't feel like I'm upgrading my character any specific way. There's not any momentum in terms of building your base, or feel like you're getting your character in any specific way or tangible way, other than fucking zero point 0.5 DPS upgrade from completing a mission. In the sense of choice that I've looked into with this is like, yeah, I understand that you can handle a mission differently and have a certain outcome, but I don't think that those really have significant impact on the story or the rewards that you get from it. I have a friend who played a mission, did a save spot, played the mission, restarted it, and did it from the other perspective. You get the same shit, you can fight the same bosses, and that air of choice is just so funneled that I don't think it provides a compelling experience, because it's just a veneer of choice. It's a
It's
veneer
a good
of
word.
something cool. Yeah, I know it's a fucking big brain word that I put on my pocket there. But I mean, that's really all I can say. I am not opposed to going back to it, but I'm not excited, engaged, or intrigued enough to do so until I maybe feel that draw. But I just can't say I do it at the moment.
So you really just pulled an interception and ran to the end zone on the other side of the field, because you just said a lot I want to talk about. The first thing I want to talk
Yeah.
about is where you say that there wasn't the intrigue from the beginning. You're not one to say that games don't get good until 30 hours in, which, by the way, is a fucking terrible argumentative point.
Mhm.
However, I'm going to make it a little bit, because that intrigue comes, but it's not 30 hours in, it's 3 hours in.
Yeah.
And you need to do another story mission. I'm telling you right now, because that's going to change your perspective, and that's going to literally take you from the prologue to the game.
Okay. Well, I'll do that in 2 weeks when I have a console that plays the fucking video game.
No, that's fair. That's totally
Yeah.
fair. And I've never said anything to disparage the fact that CD Projekt Red should never release on last gen consoles. Ha da 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 da. Secondly, I don't think you've gotten far enough in to get to the upgrade trees, A, being more meaningful, and getting to the point where they feel more emergent. Because as you do certain things in the world, as you participate in stealth, as you use handguns, as you use long rifles, as you do melee, those stats upgrade individually. Your passive actions, your moment to moment actions, do upgrade your character. You put perk points into these larger things, but how you actually play in the world then influences the way that your stats move. I think that that is a really smart design decision, because it
Mhm.
allows you to actually take agency over your action, and firing a handgun makes your proficiency with that type of weapon higher. I think that's
Yeah.
a really interesting thing to do. I think that's all very compelling. And I
I
want
just wish they had shown that at the beginning. There's no indication of that happening. Like
okay.
from everything that I did, they do the tutorials. You do the stealth one, you do the melee combat one, you do the shooting one, the hacking
Yeah.
one, and it's like, okay, they're teaching me these things. It's like, well, what situations are these useful in? Like they all feed together, but why should I want to specialize in any of them? Because there's the upgrade tree from the beginning is just fucking DPS stuff, and I don't understand why they would. There's no carrot to dangle in front of you, like, okay, I'll get this upgrade that allows me to do this, if it's just giving you more damage with your bullets.
I feel when I played Breath of the Wild and I got off the Great Plateau, one of the first shrines I hit was a major test of strength shrine, and I
Mhm.
was like, this combat is fucking borked. But it was on me to recognize that I'm not supposed to be here yet. I'm banging my head against the game in a way that my head is not supposed to be banged.
Yeah.
And I think part of an open world nonlinear experience is taking agency over your experience. And if something's not working, trying to figure out why. Now, a game not having good enough to tell us to explain that to you is a problem. But at the end of the day, in a game that asks you to participate in the world, I think that it's important that you participate in the world in various ways to figure out what works and what doesn't.
Mhm.
So I just think that you need to retune yourself just a little bit to do another story mission and to fall into what CD Projekt Red wants you to fall into, because I promise you, when you slide down that slide, you're going to get where you're trying to go. But I don't think we need to hammer this point home any further. It
Sure. Yeah.
w- can I just talk about the game for just a couple minutes? 'Cause I
Yeah,
got I
that's
got a
fine.
couple
Yeah.
things I want to say.
Okay.
I think Night City is incredible. There's a couple things I've noticed that I really love about it, and the first thing is that, again, you haven't gotten there yet, but there's a point where your car gets fucked. Your
Mhm.
car gets destroyed, so you have to be on foot for a little bit. And there's a lot of different ways you can get a new vehicle. Um, but I chose to just walk around Night City on foot for a little bit.
Sure.
And it reminded me of being in New York, or being in Boston, or being in Providence, in a way that a lot of games don't. because you walk past these NPCs who are in the midst of conversation that are legitimately interesting, and these people are dressed differently, they walk differently. These are people walking around Night City. The way that there's advertisements and the way that the cars are and everything, this feels like a place that is actually here. Like it doesn't feel like a city that is being emulated in a video game. It feels like an actual city where people are. And as I walked around, I got that impression. And when I get on my bike or when I get in my car and the radio is pounding and I hear all of this music that CD Projekt Red got recorded specifically for the game,
Mhm.
and you hear the purr of a motorcycle that was recorded from Keanu Reeves' bike shop, there's just this level of detail that I haven't seen before. And playing on PS5, when I get to these back alleys and when there's these particle effects and things look pretty and there's this drug deal happening and the music is behind me, there is a level of immersion here that is really incredible, especially if you like this aesthetic. At
Yeah.
the same time, there are the technical issues that I have experienced. I have experienced two crashes, neither of which really sent me back particularly far, but they are frustrating.
Yeah.
But I just think that the presentation of the game is so great, and I can only imagine what my roommate is doing with his goddamn GTX, whatever the fuck, on his computer. He's already
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
his
Yeah.
second playthrough, really loving it, and I'm loving what they have here. And then you pair that with this constant breadcrumb sense of new weapons, new loot, all of this cool stuff, because you do get to where you're getting that stuff really frequently, and you get smart weapons, and you get these really interestedly painted unique guns that these gang members are using. You get to pick them up and be like, hey, they painted this fucking gun in this way. That's super cool. And you get to have these moments that are so special, tied up in a world that is so rich with lore and ideas that you just want to learn everything about them. Meeting Ripper Docs, brain dances, all of these things are so interesting. The geography, the way everything comes together and weaves and ebbs and flows, the ways, like I said, you can pull on plot threads that jump off of the main storyline into these subquests are so interesting. And the fact that CD Projekt Red is so confident in their writing that they say, hey, here is the fallout of a major character's death, but you don't even need to go there if you don't want to. That communicates a sense of confidence in writing and direction that is so impressive. And when you choose to engage with those moments, they're really special. And that's where I think the experience starts to feel more like your own, because I know that a lot of people probably didn't go to his funeral. And the fact that I
Sure.
was able to do that, it was special. And then you compare that and you add that on top of gunplay that is, it's fairly standard, to be fair. It feels pretty much on par with a lot of gunplay and a lot of first person titles, but the locations you're in, the way that cover is destructible, the AI I think is not great. Sorry as I fucking bumped my camera, but the AI is not great. That's one of my main criticisms with the game. It's the AI and, like I said, the dialogue options. But in the moment to moment, in that gunfight, when you're hitting yourself with a bounce back, when you're switching between weapons, you've got an Arasaka katana, and you're switching to this painted shotgun, and then back to your other weapons. It really is fun and kinetic. And I haven't really put too much time into hacking. I've mainly been putting stats into body and reflexes. The fact that there's conversations where I'm talking with like Judy and she's like, we really got to get in here. We're gonna have to go find, this access key. And I'm like, actually step aside. And my somehow biceps bigger than mine in real life, yanking a door open. They're just these moments that really feel rewarding and empowering. And I am obsessed with this game in a way that I haven't felt in a while. 2020 has been a fucking awesome year for games,
Mhm.
full of games that I've had a lot of fun with. But Cyberpunk is the most fun I've had with a game in a while, which says a lot about both the year and about Cyberpunk. And it is a crying fucking shame that CD Projekt Red let the game release the way it did.
Yeah.
Because if all of this controversy was out of the way, I think that the narrative around this game would be a lot different, because there's a really special game. But like you said, the game doesn't release in a vacuum. You have to contextualize the fact that this is not the opening montage where you're shooting people's legs, throwing a gun, doing these things.
Yeah.
This is a really interestingly tightly written, narratively rich, environmentally rich Fallout game.
Mhm.
And when you set yourself to that, there's just a really special experience here. And like I said, it's informed by my love of Blade Runner and Akira and my interest in this world. But it's just offering me exactly what I was hoping it was going to offer me. I
Yeah.
really, really love Cyberpunk 2077.
Now, I have to comment on one thing because I totally agree about the design of Night City. I
Yes.
absolutely love the aesthetic. I'm much more of a futuristic sci-fi person than fantasy, so it's
Yeah.
been harder for me to get into games, even though like something like Skyrim or Final Fantasy VI really did grab me. This aesthetic I was super excited for. I couldn't get into The Witcher 3 because I'm like, it's fucking dragons and elves again. God damn it.
I
But I
agree.
was looking at this and I was like, okay, this is something I'm excited to get into. And that's exactly why I spent so much of my time digging around every possible corner that I could. Most of my time in this game was going up weird staircases that funnel into like tunnels of shops and lots of dildos, and you find back alleys and you do all this. And it's really cool at first. I think this game is, again, I'm gonna use the word of a mirror of style and design and aesthetic, but there's so much to this open world. And of course, it's an open world. I'm not expecting it to be everything is incredibly detailed, but I was just noticing, and I think this also does have to do with the fact that I am playing it on hardware that doesn't fucking know what to do with it. But I don't get those moments where I'm walking around and seeing people that feel like they're in the world. They're fucking clipping through signs. There's
Yeah.
3 of the exact same character model in a row. People are like, I'll be doing something and someone will pop into existence right next to me. And it's so immersion breaking for this world that I think has so much potential that I was just ripped out of it every single time. And unfortunately, I want to be into the lore. I want to find the things hiding on the floor that give me a weird story that hopefully will pan out later. But I begin to notice when you do dig into the cracks of Night City and go around every alley that most shops don't do anything and everything is closed, and a lot of the lore documents are repeats, and I'm going around the city and trying so hard to want to be engaged with this world, but when the cracks come to you by just looking slightly too hard, I just think that it's just unfortunate. I think a lot of the immersion is broken because of the power of the console that I'm playing it on. When signs don't pop in properly, or textures are reused, or character models aren't doing things that anything ever should.
Yes.
It's just really interesting that they put the game out in the state, didn't let it be reviewed on these systems,
Yeah.
willfully lied about the production of the game and its release, and also the fact that this game was supposed to come out in fucking April, before next gen consoles, before the bigger graphics cards.
Well, it wasn't going to.
Everyone, well, that it was scheduled for that. They,
Yeah.
they were ready to release this game. They delayed it what, like 2 months before that date. Everyone was going to have this experience that I'm having with the looking worse than a PS3 game and running worse than a PS2 game, visuals and performance, with all those technical problems of character pop in and textures not loading and repeats and poor animations and all of that. This game is such a divergent experience because CD Projekt Red didn't put the effort into it being coherent. And I think that is a crying fucking shame because there's a lot of potential here, but it's hidden. You have to fucking dig through layers of bullshit to get to the diamond underneath. And I think that's just really sad.
I don't think that's true. I think that's true depending on where you play. And I think that's the biggest problem with this game, because that is not the PS5 experience.
Yeah.
And that doesn't invalidate your opinion at all in any stretch of the imagination, but it just means that you shouldn't play it on last gen.
Yeah.
Because you don't have to dig through the bullshit on PS5. You don't. And you certainly don't have to on PC.
Yeah.
And you don't have to on Stadia, by the way, apparently. So if you wanted to
It's
play
true.
it,
Yeah.
play it on Stadia. But I don't know. I think that you should play the game again on better hardware and do more than the first half of the main story mission, which is not, again, to disparage the way you played, but to say that if you had taken one more step forward, I really think that your experience of Cyberpunk 2077 would be markedly different.
Yeah. And I certainly hope so. I have no reason to want to dislike this game.
Yes.
I'm only sharing the experience that I had in the time that I spent with it, and I don't discredit any of the things that the developers at CD Projekt Red can do, because they're talented people. It's not the developers' fault here. This is management through and through. It is marketing through and through. And unfortunately, this game was just put in a terrible situation,
Yes.
a situation that very few games have ever been in. And
Yes.
and when I come out and say something like I did last night, which you didn't fucking believe, but that this is probably the most disappointed I've ever been in a game. That is me including the stuff surrounding it, because I always include that in my perspective on a game. And it's fine if you don't, but everything around this game and unfortunately in the game for me was just underwhelming, poorly baked, and half-heartedly designed in a way that I have not had an experience with a video game before. And I just it's crazy that this game is so fucking divisive. I think it's wild. I think it's interesting, and I'm certainly gonna stick around for the fucking discourse around it. But it's been fun to watch from the sidelines, because I think there's a possibility that I want to go in to try it again, but there's so many fucking games I want to play that will run and that I'm interested in the stories of, that I don't see why I would really want to go back to it.
Well, we'll talk about the game again in our review, and then again in my top 10 games of 2020 list.
Yep.
But I think that's about where we'll leave the discussion for now. Holy fucking Christ! But Tucker,
Good sentence.
do you have anything else you want to say to wrap it up?
It's the fucking end of the year. We passed 200 subscribers. We've got other shit happening. We've got Nintendo and PlayStation year in review. We got ranking lists. You wanted to do a most disappointing games of the year, most favorite games of the year. We've got movie content coming out, of course, with Quest, and then BLB and BLBS are going to still be continuing, and then straight into 2021 Oscar season, baby. I don't know how we're going to handle that, but at least Tanner and I are going to be reviewing a ton of the nominees for that. We're going to be doing predictions, where he and I probably will do reactions to it. We'll do discussions. There's a lot of stuff coming out, and I'm very excited to see what comes next. And I'm interested to see what the fuck happens with Cyberpunk, because I think they could turn this around. This game is not available to purchase on the PlayStation at the moment. And they could turn it around. They could release patches. They have DLC coming. They have the next gen official versions coming. There's a lot of interesting things that this game is going to stay in the zeitgeist for fucking months in ways that most games don't. So we'll be covering all that because it's interesting.
I agree with yeah, sure. How about we say subscribe?
Yeah.
Video.
Yeah.
Leave comments that Tucker has to respond to.
This is your video, buddy boy.
No, I'm not going to respond to the comments, unfortunately.
God
with that, we'll talk to you all later. But I will only talk to you on camera. Will I talk to you in the comment section? Probably not. Go fucking at me on Twitter if you want to talk to me. It's in the description. Goodbye. We should record.
No, I meant I was gonna expound.
Then expound.
Do you want to record another video, like two videos?
I would. Which one do you want to record?
Wide Pog.